Welcome to Rest in Peace Hangouts, but it's still a comic show. I'm Mike.
And I'm Vincent.
So, YouTube pulled support for Google Hangouts. What, on Wednesday?
Yeah, the first.
Yeah, on the or no, I thought it was the second.
I think it was August 1st, which would be a Thursday.
Okay, so we have to do our show in a different manner now, but we get the cool snazzy graphics now, Vince, for when we're talking about our books. So, who really won in the end?
Not Google, even though we're still
Not Google.
YouTube.
Technically, this made our show better, but now we're doing this through StreamYard. So shout out to the lovely duck that's now in the upper right-hand corner of these videos now.
Yep.
Um,
we've still. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but there's still a few things we can learn on this thing. So our format might have slight tweaks and stuff as we go forward.
I should say, I think at least I'm working on an audio-only version coming soon. But for now, this is where we're stationed through StreamYard on this. So this is the way it's going to work now. Really, nothing should change since we tested this out earlier today. We were trying to go through OBS and that way manner of doing it, and frames were dropping and delays and everything. So thankfully, this was the way we figured it out. Our two other co-hosts are not here. Ginger Dan was up in the Great White North of Canada, and he is traversing Toronto's Sky Dome, and Mr. McNamara is trapped in Philadelphia. Hopefully he's not getting the rapid case of hepatitis A that's spreading through your city, Vince.
So here we are. We trek onwards.
It's almost like it's renumbered and it's a reboot. Could we say this is an all-new, all-different comic show?
Yeah, but we're not going to renumber.
Oh, no, we're not.
This is not volume 2. So I think both of us have a few haul things. You want me to start?
I can start. I'll start just because I have him sitting right next to me. So, me and Ginger Dan last weekend we went to this place called Captain Blue Hen Comics that's like in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is in the bottom of a church that's no longer a church. That this very, very old man has run for like 30 years or something, like going back to the 80s. And he just has boxes upon boxes of back issues in this kind of moldy, dusty basement. Vince, you've been there. You can confirm this. But he's going through this retirement sale. So if you paid with cash in like some of the rooms, everything is 50. It was like 50% off. So I picked up some singles, which I've been trying to get out of buying singles. So haha to that. And then we also stopped at a Second and Charles through Harrisburg on the way back to State College. So without further ado, this is what I got. I only got one Marvel book in this entire batch. So let's go that. We have Doctor Strange number 56, Paul Smith and Roger Stern issue. It was cool to grab that just because I know that's kind of a famous cover. We have Superman number 5. Well, Superman in Action Comics number 583. Let's see whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow issue. I found that just laying there, and I was like, well, if no one's going to claim this, I will. We got 2 issues of Justice League International. Number 8, which is the famous issue where they move into the new headquarters and everything breaks. And then I have Justice League America number 28, which is the first date of Ice and Guy Gardner, where he takes her to a sleazy movie theater. The rest are all Batman-centric issues. I have all of Batman Year 3 that I found there. So I've never read Batman Year 3, and as of now, I don't think we're getting a deluxe edition hardcover of it. So this is the way I'm going to read it. But that's the story where Robin shows up. So I'm kind of excited to read that. And I just found out when I was going through the issues, Lonely Place of Dying takes place, like, publication order right after this. I got Batman number 416. I read this in the Second Chances trade paperback. It's where Jason Todd meets Nightwing for the first time, and Nightwing and Batman kind of have a first confrontation with each other after a long while. And then the rest is a 3-issue arc in Batman by Jim Starlin, which starts in Batman number 414, where he tracks down the serial killer, the Cutter. That this issue, like that issue, was in the Second Chances trade, and then it kind of leaves off on a cliffhanger. So I tracked it down. It concludes in Batman 421 and 422. So at some point, I'm going to sit down and actually finish that story because I liked the beginning of it. And then from Second and Charles, I got the whole run of Supergirl and the Legion of Superheroes. So I also look forward to reading that. Mark Waid writes the first 3 books here, and then Tony Bedard taking the last. Vince, what do you have?
So I've got an eclectic mix. First, I've got 2 non-eclectic books. I have Wolverine, Weapon X Unbound. Wait, I gotta fucking.
I was gonna say, you're gonna change the camera back?
This is my face now. Wolverine, Weapon X Unbound. This replaces the never-released Wolverine by Larry Hama and Mark Silvestri, Volume 3. Collecting Wolverine 47 through 57. On the back here, this is the back cover, and the original issue of this, I forget which issue number, the yellow was the actual cover, and the holes were literally holes because it was a die-cut cover. So you got 3 holes in your cover, and the Wolverine that you see underneath was the first page of the issue. And it's Mark Silvestri, early 90s, maybe super late. I think this is 90s at this point. You know, probably the most popular Wolverine run of all. And then I have less interesting New Mutants by Abnett and Lanning, Volume 1, complete collection. This follows Zeb Wells' run. It's not amazing or anything. It's fine. Then, first eclectic thing, I have the Wretch Omnibus. And the Wretch is a independent character created by Phil Hester. And it's all slick black and white art. There are a few other contributors in here. I'm not super familiar with this, but it's Phil Hester. It's cool black and white, superhero adjacent vigilante stuff. And the reason I discovered this and everything is that this is published by Omaha Bound. And Omaha Bound is kind of like a tiny, like a micro publisher startup. I don't know how to describe it, but created by 2 guys who had connections with the custom binding kind of niche of comic book collecting and reading and stuff. They were guys who either worked for binderies or would like do like freelance like preparation for people for their custom bind books, and they decided, let's work directly with creators to make like weird books that rather than have people custom bind them, let's make them ourselves and in limited runs and design everything about it and work directly with the creators. So this was created by them in direct collaboration with Phil Hester. They made some book with like some of Cullen Bunn's earliest like small press self-published stuff. They did a book with Charles Soule, a version of his book, of his indie book Letter 44, and I'm sure they have other stuff planned. And so I pre-ordered or backed this, whatever it was, a long time ago, but I finally got it, and I'm excited to read it. It has like a cool like plasticky kind of finish on the covers, which the only thing I can really compare it to that off the top of my head is the old Kyle Baker Plastic Man trade, which has plastic covers. This isn't literally plastic. It just has a weird finish, but it's kind of cool. Makes it stand out and everything. So I'm excited to get into that. And then, even weirder than that, even more off the trail than that, I got a stack of books from SD Publishing, standing for Steve Ditko, the self-published publisher, whatever you want to call it, from Steve Ditko and Robin Snyder. Of course, unfortunately, Steve Ditko has passed recently, but this is his self-published stuff. So, like 2008 or so, Steve Ditko wrote, drew, created, published a loose series called the 32 series. And they were 32-page comic books, sometimes with essays and stuff. And he put out, I don't know, like 20, 25, 30 of them since around 2008 or 2010 or something like that. And I was buying a bunch of them individually in chunks because I would figure, oh, I'll custom bind this. It'll be kind of cool. Some custom bind volumes of Steve Ditko's self-published work. But I discovered when I went to go order a bunch of the newest or the ones I didn't have, I realized that I learned that Robin Snyder is actually collecting them. So I have these 3 trade paperbacks, and it's volume 2 through 4. For some reason, 1 and 5 are coming out later. So I'll get those whenever they come out, and I remember to check again. So I'll probably, I don't know what I'll do with all the single issues I have. And so it's like, it's a weird black and white Steve Ditko, late career Steve Ditko stuff, representing a lot of his philosophies and everything like that, all of his ideas on costume design and things like that. And they made slight changes to some of the stuff, like it says, like, and they pointed out editorial changes. I don't know how to use this camera. Editorial changes from the original, and most of them are like weird, like super anal, like text changes, whatever. So those 3 books, and then related, not collected in those, I got the Ditko Public Service Package, and this is originally from 1990, and this is sort of trade paperback size, so that's cool. And then not trade paperback size, this is Laszlo's Hammer, which is from 1988. No, 1992. And this delves more into like his philosophy stuff. Like, it's really weird. Like, I am Jesus Christ, I am God. And Laszlo's Hammer is an actual like philosophical concept, but this is his own version of it. And he's talking about, I don't know how to use this camera because it's all reversed and stuff.
Just hold it straight. Just hold it straight in front of it.
And then this is the Hero Comics number 23, which the Hero Comics is his co-publisher Robin Snyder. They're like a newsletter type of thing and like fanzine. And I got this specific issue because it includes an unfinished Ditko story, which I don't know why he didn't finish or whatever, but it's a bunch of like Ditko roughs. It's kind of weird. So that's that. And there's a weird situation right now with Ditko's most famous self-published thing, Mr. A, where IDW has, like, at San Diego announced that they're doing some kind of Mr. A reprint, and they're working with Ditko's family, but Ditko himself said, like, I don't want Mr. A collected, or at least I don't want it collected by major publishers. And in fact, like two years ago, IDW announced that they were doing a Mr. A collection, and then it kind of like disappeared and they never talked about it again, probably because Ditko reached out and was like, hey, no. But now he's passed, and I don't know what the situation is. It's kind of weird. So that's our haul. Yeah, that's all our haul. So this week we got some stuff to talk about. And starting with our retro book is Superman number 144 from 1961. It's got a pretty eye-catching cover. The cover ties into, so there's 3 Superman stories in here. The cover ties into the last story, but it's a very eye-catching cover with the Earth exploding in front of Superman, Supergirl, and Krypto. and they are homeless orphans once more. But this first story here is the Super Weapon of X by Jerry Siegel and Kurt Swan. Kurt Swan, big time Superman artist for basically like 3 decades.
I believe he started drawing Superman in 1946, and then basically drew him up. I want to say up and through the 80s.
I don't know if he goes back that far, but I mean his final major contribution to the character is Whatever Happened to Man of Tomorrow, which Mike held up, and that's like 85, 86, right before the final pre-crisis issues. So
arguably, I was watching a documentary on those, like a YouTube. Someone just did a video on the. They referenced that I think his first time drawing Superman was 1946. So like that's kind of crazy. I didn't double check it though.
I would say one of the 4 most important Superman artists of all time.
Who would you say all time?
I would
use your top 4.
I would put, and I'm not saying this is my 4 favorite. I'm saying 4 most important, 4 most influential.
Yeah.
I would say Garcia Lopez is in there because he did a lot of influential work on the character, and also with all the licensing work. I would say John Byrne is up there, and I would say obviously you have to include Joe Shuster.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that list.
And that's 4. With countdown lists, you'd probably want to round it to 5, but I'm not off the top of my head. I don't know who is really at that kind of influential level along with those
Jurgen.
4 guys. Yeah, probably maybe Jurgens is a good option. And speaking of Joe Shuster, the writer on this story, and in fact, he writes all 3 stories, is Jerry Siegel, the co-creator of Superman. And this is 1961, so he created the character and was on a contract with DC to basically be in charge of the Superman books for pretty much like 10 years, from 1938 to around 48. But then he left for a while, and then he came back to do various things for DC. So the story here, Luthor is in prison, and he instructs his cellmate, his name's like Talbot, to create a weapon to defeat Superman, and then he'll come back and break out Luthor. And this Talbot guy, I think he kind of looks like Ronald Reagan. I don't know if you both in.
A little bit. I see it.
Yeah. So Superman is buying the billionth copy of the Daily Planet, which is a total bullshit publicity stunt, because there's no way a newspaper would have that kind of precise analytics to know when the billionth newspaper was sold.
Hey, it's a popular newspaper, and Perry White's a great editor, so
yeah. And Talbot, he has a disguise, and so he asks Superman, I'll contribute some money if you do a crazy feat. And Superman demolishes a skyscraper by just like tunneling through it while flying, and somehow that allows Talbot to store his super energy in a battery, which is disguised in a camera. And he actually does give Superman the $5,000, which nowadays in 2019 would be $43,000. So he's handing over a shitload of money. And he got this money from a stash that Luthor had somewhere. But he ends up double-crossing Luthor. He doesn't really give a shit about breaking Luthor out, and he's going to make money himself. So it gets up to some robbing, and when Superman shows up, he shoots Superman with the super weapon, which blasts him through space and into the sun. And it's funny because Superman points out, he's like, oh, I'm not invulnerable. But Superman doesn't, like, he's not in pain or, like, damaged at any point in this story. Really, the weapon just has enough power to, like, push him, like, just propel him through space.
It's enough to cause a nuisance for him. It's like, well, that's annoying.
Yeah. And later, so basically this is the pattern where Talbot in disguise says, "Hey, Superman, do some crazy shit, and I'll give a bunch of money to charity." And then as Superman, and then he uses the weapon on Superman, and while Superman is away, he does a crime, and then it repeats. So Superman also goes bowling with a wrecking ball and some trees, and then Talbot's guys, they rob a fair exhibit, which the fair exhibit is literally just come look at $250,000 in cash. Like, I guess it's just like a room that you can walk in and just see a pile of cash. And this is insane because 250,000 in cash today would be $2.15 million of cash laying around. So they get that. This time Superman gets blasted downwards, so he goes into the Earth's core. And his third feat is a little more dubious, where he saves a dumb idiot from going over a waterfall in a barrel.
With telescopic vision.
Yes. And this time the weapon knocks him backwards in time.
Yeah, yeah.
But just a few days, so he actually catches Talbot being an idiot and talking about his plans. And it's weird because Superman talks, like in this issue, he talks about his super senses. He uses his vision to see the guy, stupid idiot, in the barrel. And I think he even references like being able to see through certain things and hear certain things. But he never like thought to question Talbot. And
Right.
I guess it's a different version of Superman, because some versions of Superman imply like at all times he hears everything, and sometimes he'll focus more on something, but hypothetically he could hear someone. And like that actually is relevant to what they're currently doing, because that's like the whole Leviathan thing, or not as more like what's in the main Superman books, where there's certain people where they don't, certain gangs, like you're not allowed to say Superman's name
You're not allowed
because
to
then he'll hear you.
but they go even a step further where they're meeting in like lead-lined rooms, so like hopefully he can't see in there too.
And I think this issue is funny because Superman basically falls for his own like tactics, because Talbot, his disguise, he puts on glasses, that's the Clark Kent thing. He puts on a shitty fake beard, and he even wears the same clothes as the Crook, who then shoots Superman.
Right.
It's kind of ridiculous, but Superman is somehow able to travel back to the present, because that's a power he has. I guess he flies super fast. It's like the whole Superman 2 thing.
It's books like this that make you go, oh, wow, when Superman 2, they're just making up powers for him. Not really that outlandish.
Yeah, it's pretty in line with the Silver Age stuff. And then also Superman has photographic memory, which he uses to devise a plan with Jimmy. And it's hilarious here where the script literally goes blah, blah. And is like, he starts telling his plan to Jimmy, and then the like word balloon just kind of cuts out, and it's like the rest of the plan not important, and I kind of respect that. And
because
so,
I mean, as the reader, we already know what happened, and we know what the plan's going to be.
Superman switches out a stone obelisk with a giant cardboard one to bait Talbot, and then Jimmy uses kryptonite, which both weakens Superman for a second to like make the feat like seem more real, but also somehow then the battery absorbs kryptonite, which makes the weapon basically useless, and then Superman destroys it, and Talbot's back in the cell with Lex. I thought this was, I don't know, for a 1961 Superman issue, it's kind of fun.
I thought it was fun.
Yeah, and we'll talk more as we finish the whole issue, but each of these stories are either 8 or 9 pages. And honestly, like even the 8-page one, it feels just as complete, if not more complete, of a story than a lot of the 20-page stories that we're going to talk about later in this episode.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's less complex and everything with characterization and plot and certain aspects, but they fit. We have 3 complete stories in this issue, pretty much.
Yeah.
So the second story is kind of like, I guess, a major continuity moment.
Yeah, it's the first public appearance of Superboy.
Yeah, and the artist here and on the next story is Al Plastino, who I think Al Pacino, he's considered one of the major artists of the '50s era of Superman, which this is still '61, so that's still kind of in his wheelhouse. And I think the way people often describe him is that he made Superman like really barrel chested and have like a huge upper body. That's his signature look. And you can see that here and in the next story. And I feel for that same reason, I don't think, and the art is still fine, but I don't think he's a perfect fit for Superboy because he still kind of draws Superboy in some scenes, sort of still with that huge upper body.
His head
And
is so huge in some scenes too.
yeah, I think Superboy, like I like seeing the actual contrast and evolution. Like Superboy should be a little bit thinner in my eyes.
Yeah.
Um, but this story has a framing device of Superman flying around the world taking photos of the London and Paris editions of the Daily Planet. So this is a very, very major popular newspaper, and he's doing that to give a gift to Perry White.
If I'm not wrong, which I might be because I haven't watched the movie in a while, I think the whole reason why they're in Paris in Superman 2 is they are working on a story at the planet's Paris branch,
Okay.
which is why the
Um,
sequence of the Eiffel Tower takes place. But I can't exactly remember.
this framing device is honestly kind of pointless. Like it doesn't have a ton to do with the story. But in the flashback, he's with Ma and Pa Kent, who own a general store. And
Yeah,
off the top of my head, I'm not sure like if I'm familiar with that. I don't know if that's like just some weird thing in this story because they're like the continuity doesn't matter back then. Or maybe Golden Age, Silver Age, Ma and Pa Kent own a general store. I didn't really know that.
I think it's
Um,
neat where it
Matt,
has them that, or if they're given jobs outside of just being farmers.
yeah. Matt might know, but he's not here with us. And then Lana Lang shows up to, I guess she actually just wants to hang out with Clark, but Clark has to go do a superhero thing. So he chases her off by pulling a toy mouse out of his pocket, but not to freak her out. It like freaks himself out. And Lana's like, "You're a fucking loser." And then it's like, "I'll see you later." Um, which was kind of interesting because in a 1961 comic book, you'd almost expect Lana to be the one to go like freak out at the mouse and be like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah,
But like
yeah.
Clark does it to fake freak out himself. And then he stops some strange criminals who are getting away by using diving suits, like old like giant helmet Bioshock style. So that's Superboy's first official mission, I guess.
Well, I don't
And
think it's his first official mission. It's his first public mission. I think he's like
yeah,
done some stuff, but like been so fast that no one sees.
he's able to show off his bulletproof skin. So then he gets to visit the governor. And Smallville pre crisis Silver Age, it kind of isn't exactly in Kansas during this era, but just for the hell of it, I was going to look up the governor anyway. But that's impossible because FDR was president so long that this could be 4 different governors of Kansas. But with the governor, he stops a wrongful execution. Then he
Which
saves President.
which
Go
would
ahead.
echo back to the first story of Action Comics #1.
Yeah. He saves President FDR from a explosive assassination attempt, and he offers to do literally whatever. And so the president just like has him doing a bunch of odd jobs, including like serving as target practice for the military. They just like shoot bombs at him to test them, and basically he's overworked. So he decides, all right, this doesn't work out. I'm just going to do patrols and I'll go after major crimes and issues as I'm able to deal with them. I'm not going to be like your lackey. And so that sets up, I guess, the status quo for how Superman does his super heroics. And then we back to the present. There's just a quick scene with Lana, and that's basically it. Lana's back. She's in Metropolis visiting.
Right. Well, and then we get the classic like where she shows him the yearbook of
Yeah.
Clark Kent, highest grades, most likely to become famous, And she's like, "Well, that didn't happen. You're just a reporter." And of course, we know that Clark Kent's really Superman. So, ta-da!
Yeah, also a pretty fun story. Honestly, they could have done the Lana Lang epilogue without the weird like photo gifs for Perry White intro, which I feel just took up like a page for no reason. But again, another enjoyable story, and this
Yep.
one kind of important.
The last story is the Orphans of Space, which is the story that's shown on the cover, where we open up with Superman, Supergirl, and Crypto being kind of pulled over by space police, which already kind of hilarious because Superman has destroyed the Earth. So we're gonna immediately be gonna flashback to the whole gang's hanging out in the Fortress of Solitude because it's basically just a clubhouse at this time, in a base of operations, especially still at the time where Superman needs a giant key to open it, which I always like that. Um, but they see like a plane that's flying overhead, and they're like, "Oh wow, we need to guide this thing in because it's not going to know where to go." So they take their capes off and like tie them on posts to get this plane to land down carefully. And Superman then has this machine that he got from another planet that he's like, "Oh yeah, I got him in this thing, and we'll see if it goes." Also, if I completely mess up while disassembling it and seeing what it does, it might just blow up the Earth. And when they get back, it blows up the Earth. So, and also radiates pieces of Earth. He basically turns Earth into kryptonite. He just replicated exactly what happened on Krypton. So he then gets taken to spaceport where him and Supergirl and Crypto their case, and then the two dinosaur times. And so they have to battle back through that. And it's all revealed that oh no, winds kicked up red dust of red kryptonite that got onto their capes, and they were all this really everything is okay. But just to make sure, he's going to take this machine to a different planet and disassemble it there to make sure he doesn't actually blow up the Earth. Just in case. Very crazy story that I thought was like really out there and funny. Because like when
Yeah,
the
it's
Earth explodes, it's like, oh man, that's really bad. I'm really upset that happened. Like,
it's pretty fucked up because like Superman, especially the writing for the era, he's like really traumatized, and then
yeah,
later on the dinosaur exiled planet, Supergirl and Crypto die right before Superman wakes up from the kryptonite dream. So it's
yeah.
just like this fucked up. This is essentially an imaginary story, sort of. It's not really because it's a red kryptonite dream, but the red kryptonite essentially sets up an imaginary story.
I
And I
like
thought this,
how they collect the red kryptonite dust by off their capes by essentially putting it in a Folger's coffee container and then putting it up on his trophy shelf in the fortress.
I thought this issue was cool because you get a modern Superman story, you get a Superboy story, and you sort of get an imaginary story.
I think it's a
I
great
mean,
sampler for Superman of this time.
yeah, if I was a kid in 1961 and I liked Superman, this would be a great issue.
Yeah, and I think it's as far as early DC stuff, it's definitely more engaged than some other stuff I've read. Um, which I thought this was going to be really hard for me to read, but actually, it really wasn't at all, which was nice.
Yeah. And if a modern writer were to tell any three of these stories, they would probably take multiple issues, whereas there are 9 pages here.
Yeah, this would be like an 8-issue arc for Bendis.
Yeah.
But that's that's the way storytelling works now, though.
Yep.
And with that, that
Um,
concludes the retro book this week.
yep.
So I'm gonna quickly pop into Indie Corner here, where we have Angel #3 from Boom Studios, Brian Edward Hill and Gleb Melnikov. Um, kind of a cool cover of Angel holding a cross as his hands burning as he's facing off with this demon possessed lady in this mental hospital. Um, issue opens up. We're constantly getting these flashbacks of Angel as Angelus seeing the horrible things he did and him trying to feel guilt and still repent for that. Um, he beats the demon in the that's attacking him in the hospital, save Fred, by throwing a water balloon filled with holy water at it and burning it to death. I thought that was pretty funny in a kind of a creative way for him to take down this vampire. But basically, the crux of the issue is he takes Fred back to kind of his house, and he's visited by Lilith, the kind of the witch, who's kind of placing him in the spiritual journey of turning him into a hero. And she's saying she's speeding up the process by she's introducing him to all the people that are going to play an important role in his life now. So she's seeking them out. I know you've never seen the show, but Fred comes into the show at the end of season 2, and then she became like a big part of the gang. So it's kind of that's our device to how we get all the players from the show into the book, which I think is an interesting idea. Because she's the first one we've seen yet. We haven't seen Wesley. We haven't seen Gunn yet. And Wesley hasn't even shown up in Buffy yet. So, and then like Cordelia's and Buffy, she would come over later. But a lot of things going on. But to kind of see what, because Fred's still messed up from when she was in the demon dimension. Angel has to use dark magic to kind of go in the dimension and kind of rescue her out. And he gets in there and kind of his body just gets like destroyed and he like starts melting and turning into a skeleton because he's going into like this hell dimension. And when he wakes up, he's in this giant maze and he doesn't know where he is. So I'm digging where this is going. I like the device Brian Hill's using to introduce us to the characters that are familiar, but still keeping in line with this Buffy relaunch. They're the same characters and familiar, but in different ways. Kind of brought up to a modern era. I think the Buffy book is just a little bit better right now, but we've had more of a sample size from that. But I think this is definitely off to a kind of positive start, at least for me being a big Angel fan, as I always liked Angel's show more than Buffy's. But that's it for Angel number 3. Gleb Melnikov's art is still, I think, fits the line perfectly. For what I want the book to look like. Angel looks like David Boreanaz, but not completely photographic real. I can still tell that Angel looks like Angel, and that's the important thing. But from that, I'm going to go right into Spawn number 299. Vince, we're almost at 300.
Yes,
Are you excited?
So close.
So
Yeah,
close.
I'll read 300. I'm not wasting my time
I
on
don't
this.
know if I'm going to be past 300. This obviously
Well,
Todd McFarlane on script and plot, Jason Sean Alexander on art. Todd and Greg Capullo are doing issue 300.
and I think 301 they're also hyping up. I think there's something about that.
Yeah, there's I'll look at it in the back of the book, but Spawn has enacted this kind of his final plan in action where he wants to try to bring the Redeemer onto his side. So he pulls the Redeemer into this dark dimension, and then like we'll find out what happens in there in issue 300 because the rest of the issue is his buddy kind of rolling around, like running around trying to figure out what's going on. And then we cut back to Spawn getting out of that dark dimension, talking to this demon who basically he makes himself look like a kind of shock jock TV host, and getting information on who killed his wife from him because he might know. And that would be he's shaken down Brock the Shock Fennel, who, like I said, is secretly a demon, but to the public, kind of like think of like an Alex Jones-esque character for television. And Spawn's shaking him down, is kind of figuring out what his plan is, and his friend kind of confronts him, going, everything that you're doing is going to affect everything on a global scale, and you're doing it completely selfishly. And Spawn shows that like things haven't been normal for a long time. And we get a shot of what Spawn really looks like, and he's kind of like this just burnt, charred corpse now. Um, so so we're gonna find out who killed Wanda in issue 300 and what happens to the Redeemer. What Spawn's war with Heaven and Hell as that's all gearing up, and we're gonna see Spawn like never before. Todd says, kind of a crazy amount of stuff going on in this issue. It's clearly building to a very big thing in 300. Um, I'm kind of excited for it, but um, in Spawn 301, Todd McFarlane and Greg Capullo will, with additional art by Jason Shaw Alexander, Clayton Crane, Gerono Opena, and Francisco Matina, plus more surprises to be announced. And Spawn 301 is going to be double sized too. It's going to be 48 pages. So they're kind of going all in on the celebration here for Spawn.
Fun.
I don't fully know what's going on because I haven't been reading, I guess, the past 4 arcs where this war of heaven and hell has been gearing up, kind of with Spawn's like final plan and action. But you know what? I'm enjoying it, and that's kind of the fun part, and not just. And I love Todd in a meme way. Like I think the book's kind of fun in this insane, bombastic way. So I'm sure 300 will be crazy and fun in that regard, at least. And I guess heading over to DC with a book that's crazy and fun in its own way, Batman Last Night on Earth, Book 2, or Number 2, depending on how you want to call it, with Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo doing their final Batman story. This is the second to last issue. It's only 3 issues. I like the cover here with Capullo's Bane and like this kind of creepy, like long-fingered scarecrow. He's just riding on Bane's back. The premise of this book, I wasn't hot on it with the first issue. If you remember, like I didn't. I think that's where I coined the term "hot topic Batman." But it's my pick of the week because I mean, in a week of not really much going on, it was the book that stuck with me the most, and I think I understand. Like, okay, this is Snyder doing his. If you can kind of think of it, it's kind of like Dark Knight Returns mixed with Old Man Logan in the sense of like Old Man Logan's world is just so insanely crazy. That's kind of what Scott's doing here, and it's just an outlet for Capullo to go absolutely crazy on art, which is probably the best case for this book, honestly. Um, we get Batman interrogating Joe Chill at the beginning and realizing it's a dream as he's out in the American West with Joker as ahead, and the Joker keeps wanting to be the next Robin. There's a tornado of the Speed Force going around with all the Flashes trapped in it inside as they're calling out for Batman to try to help them. But Batman's mission the whole time is to get to Superman because Superman must be able to fix why the world's gone completely to hell. There's a military base they pass through that's full of unknown soldiers, like the DC character, the Unknown Soldier. They're all dressed up like him. We get references to there now being multiple haunted tanks as like they're all fighting these zombie things. Somewhere in this station lies Captain Atom because we see a missile with his logo on it. I think his energy might just be a nuclear missile now, which is kind of interesting. Swamp Thing is part of this war with um, and then we see Bane and Scarecrow shaking down Alfred in an alley, and they're revealing that hey, there's another Batman, and we're calling him Omega, and that Omega's coming for Batman, and Alfred just pulls out a shotgun in the alley and tries to beat both of them, but he ends up getting beaten by Scarecrow and Omega, and he's dead. Batman is on his journey to the Fortress of Solitude, where he gets hit with a rocket from like Superman was sent into, and inside there, it's the kind of the craziest part of this issue is that it's Lex Luthor. Like he's visited by a Superman robot. What we think it's Superman with like he kind of looks like Nick Offerman, how he looks now with like the long hair and a beard, but no, it's a Superman robot. Lex Luthor now lives in the Fortress of Solitude. It has like the hologram program running, so it looks like the Kent farm. And with his computers there, he's trying to resend Superman back to Earth because he's responsible for why the world's gone to hell. Um, and he wants Superman back because he's kind of been proven that Superman is actually right. They had this Lex's final plan solution was to have this grand debate with Superman on justice versus evil and letting the world decide what would happen. And Superman gives this great speech, and then Lex like Lex still has to give his, but he's already convinced that Superman was right, and they're both standing there waiting to see what the world chooses. And these kryptonite spikes came up from out of the ground that Lex embedded in there from like Starro, and they killed Superman. So Lex is like forever felt remorse over this, and he's been continually trying to get Superman back to Earth, and he's gone crazy trying to replicate the system as they're then ambushed by Bane and Scarecrow. As a whole fight ensues, Wonder Woman shows back up to save Batman as they escape from the Superman robots that have now been turned against them. And they're now off to Gotham City to figure out who this Omega is. Lex says they even cloned Batman to try to bring him back. And this Batman that they chose was Omega. So he was responsible for this evil Batman. And it's heavily hinted that it might be Damian or Jason. I'm thinking it's going to be Damian. Kind of interested to see how they're going to shake that out. But this is kind of like crazy fun of just like these insane ideas. This is like the best of Snyder trying to pull out these insane ideas, like trying to be with his Grant Morrison wheelhouse for this. But I always think his ideas fall more in line with like Millar and Old Man Logan. The best ever Superman we've ever seen from Greg book. If you're going to read this, mostly do it for Capullo's art because he's pulling out all the stops on us. It looks amazing. It's me. It's Anna's looked a little bit like not that it's ever looked horrible, but like it's definitely like top of his game again for sure. Interesting note, Vince, you might find is that the Spectre like is just dead, and his cloud is just like covering the mountains and trees in like from in part of the United States. So it's just like kind of crazy. Um, we get an
Do you
odd
know how
shot of
long?
all the heroes dead, and it's all drawn by Capullo. So if you want to see Capullo draw Kyle Rayner Green Lantern, it's in there and it's pretty sweet.
Do you know how long this is going to be?
3 issues.
Okay. So
So next
we
issue's
still have one to go, but would you say I should probably pick this up in trade or something like that?
You know what? I'm gonna say yes because I think it is pretty fun, and I think for the Capullo art, it's worth it. The end of the issue, with Batman and Wonder Woman getting attacked by the Court of Owls, and Dick Grayson being part of the Court of the Owls, and seeing that Bruce Wayne's still alive. Looks like Dick Grayson's gonna join their in the end of this circle, like Scott Snyder's first big Batman story. Propping Black Mirror was the Court of the Owls, and he's kind of the Court of the Owls coming back in. But obviously, this is all going to be involved with who is Omega. I think I'm almost certain it's Damian. So I'm interested to see how this ends. It's been pretty fun. I like this issue a lot more than issue 1. But I'd say highly recommend maybe just reading it with his Scott Snyder's Dark Knight's Metal soundtrack that he was able to get made, because it fits pretty well if you want to read it with this kind of early 2000s new metal, or what metal was at that point behind it. But hey, it is what it is. It's not perfect. I know this isn't a book for you, but I know people are getting enjoyment out of it, and I can get my enjoyment out of it in its own ways. But to introduce us to Batman's Secret Files.
Yeah, so Batman Secret Files #2 is a sort of a tie-in to City of Bane. I'm not entirely sure how. I guess this is within that status quo, so this is sort of Batman disposing with some of the villains, maybe along the way. I don't really understand the continuity.
This has the City of Bane banner on it, I think, just for sales. There's nothing in here that tells us that this is happening during City of Bane.
Yeah.
That absolutely none whatsoever. Batman's not even back in Arkham, not even back in Gotham yet.
Yeah. So I mean, Batman is in all these stories, and almost all of them take place in Gotham.
Well, but if we're following City of Bane proper, he's still out in the Himalayas somewhere.
Yeah.
And I
I
highly
don't know
doubt
where.
what.
I don't know where they'll put this in the trades and stuff like that.
I don't even think it. I mean, it probably will get collected in some sort of anthology book. I would be very surprised if this is in the City of Bane trade.
Yeah. I mean, maybe at the very end. I don't know, because there is no King story within here. That's a good point. The last Secret Files, King did a story.
Right. And only I
But
believe only the King story was collected in the trades. Kind of the same way with the first annual, where the only
and the first one, the first one involves the Joker, and take it away.
So we open up with Batman chained up by the Joker as the Joker is giving a very evil monologue. This is by Andy Kubert is writing this, and then Amanake Noelpan. I definitely pronounced that wrong. I apologize.
I have no idea. I've never heard of him.
The art's all right. I thought the art was okay. I enjoyed the panel of the Joker getting joy buzzed by himself. I thought that was all right, but the Joker's like trying to figure out how to get Batman's suit deactivated, so he keeps getting thwarted by Batman's like contingency plans inside his cowl and boots and stuff. And then Batman just presses a button, and now he like has a new cape. He has like a cape shield, I guess, and then he's able to explode out of it. And then he beats the Joker. That's the story. I thought this was none of the stories in here are great.
Yeah. So Batman's big line here: for someone who loves comedy, you're really bad at improv. And my response is, no, Andy Kubert, you're bad at writing the Joker.
Yeah, Andy Kubert is not a good writer, as we've seen here. Much better artist, but the art on this story I thought was okay. But yeah, this is nothing to write home about. I've seen many better stories of the Joker having Batman chained up and Batman works himself out of it multiple times. This not really memorable at all, and I thought the whole cape shield was pretty dumb, honestly.
Yep. The next story involves Psycho Pirate, and possibly even less to talk about here.
Yeah, the Psycho Pirate story is basically the take, like a kind of a take on the cult almost, but that might just be because I recently read the cult, and there's some similarities here where Psycho Pirate's basically just indoctrinating all of these people into a cult, and Batman shows up and stops it. I thought Batman in the panel he showed up in looks really, really good. Kind of a little bit of the way Matt Wagner draws Batman, um, especially in the way in terms of the belt and the symbol on his chest. So I like the way that Batman looked in here. But yeah, nothing to write home about at all. Where Psycho Pirate tries to um, mind control Batman, but he manages to punch himself out of it, and then he saves a little girl at the end. This was Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing writing this, and then Carlos De Anda on the arts. I thought all the art in this book was actually all right to pretty good. All the writing is par to below average. So
Yeah,
that's all the story. Also, Psycho Pirate was in a really, really weird costume like this with this long, scraggly hair, which is completely different to how he's looked in King's Batman. He just looks like normal Psycho Pirate in that book. So I don't know what's going on there.
The theme here is like Psycho Pirate. He's bringing all these people into his cult that have like broken parts of their past and everything like that. And he, with his powers, he's able to soothe them. and the whole theme is Batman's broken too, and he's like everyone else and whatever. But it's not really executed well. The next story by Margaret Scott and Giuseppe Camuncoli is a Riddler story. He's recounting his most recent scheme to a new doctor at Arkham. It was a spree inspired by the Golden Ratio, but also it turns out it was actually revenge on people and organizations and stuff who've done wrong to him or that he feels wronged by. And then like the doctor, basically every time there's like a scene with an Arkham psychologist, they're always like totally unprofessional and unethical.
Oh yeah.
So he basically is like, no, actually, Riddler, you're stupid. You're not as smart as Batman, and you wanted to get caught. And allegedly, there's like some like meta riddle across this story. There's like a editor's note, and then at the end, it's like, hey, did you solve it? And I'm like, no, I don't. I have no idea what I was supposed to be looking for, and I
It's
don't
not a very
really
good
care.
riddle.
But I don't know. Maybe I'm dumb. And also, I don't really like this like I think this is actually, I guess this is a Tom King / Mikkel Janet thing. I'm not sure, but I don't like this like pimp, like not shirt open version of the Riddler with like the really long like sideburns and the open shirt. And
I
does he have like a giant tattoo?
I think it's a scar.
I don't really like it.
I can't remember if this happened in King or this happened in Snyder. I can't remember anymore. But I think the look has stuck far too long. I'm all right with the sideburns though. I think the sideburns are all right. But yeah, the
Yeah,
question mark on the chest and like the unbuttoned shirt, not really about it. I prefer my Riddler in a full. Well, I guess there's two ways you can prefer him. Do you prefer him in the jumpsuit, like kind of Jim Carrey look, or do you prefer him in the green and purple suit? I like the green and purple suit.
I can go either way. Um, I think this isn't Capullo because I'm pretty sure Capullo did like sort of suit esque and um, I think he gave him like a crazy like question mark shaped cane because I remember that he was all over the covers for Zero Year, obviously.
Right.
The next story is a Hugo Strange story, sort of.
Right. Well, yes.
Yeah, it is, but Batman is not in this story at all.
No, he's not. You talking about this one?
Yeah, I can do it. So this is Steve Orlando and Eduardo Riso, and I'm gonna blame the coloring. I was not super impressed by the art in here. I think Eduardo Riso, great artist. Once or twice, he's been a great Batman artist. I think his work looks a lot better in black and white. One of the few artists where like those weird like unwrapped or whatever the special black and white versions they put out. One of the few artists where it makes sense for him. You could
I
argue it's
thought
almost better.
I thought his art was okay here, but I will agree. It's kind of a night and day comparison if you want to compare this to uh, Dark City or yeah, it's Dark City with Azarella, right? No, Broken City.
Yeah, Broken City, and then
Yeah, Broken
Flashpoint
City. Yeah,
Bat.
it doesn't hold a candle to Broken City.
Um, there's about half a page in here, which the art is really really cool. It's when Hugo Strange like is beating the shit out of someone. But otherwise, I thought it was kind of rough. So Hugo Strange has a bunch of guys in Batman costumes hooked up to this bizarre torture device to study Batman. And one guy does a Batman-esque heroic thing, but then kind of quibbles, and it turns out that the last guy who this Batman-esque guy tries to save is Hugo Strange. So Hugo Strange had himself as part of this torture device. He flips out and kills the guy, and
It's
then sets the
very
whole thing up. Sets the whole thing up to torture more people. It's pretty fucked up.
yeah. This is pretty dark, just like out of nowhere, like the super dark story in Secret
Yeah.
Files.
And then the last story here is Tim Seeley and Patrick Gleason. It's a Bane story. starting with a Santa Prisca flashback. And there was a journalist who interviewed everyone in the prison and interviewed Bane, but he omitted the Bane part from his reporting. And so Bane is hunting him. Batman is hunting Bane. There's a cool glider that is designed for one page. It's like
Yeah.
glows red, which it's a cool look, but it seems like something Batman actually wouldn't have.
It
Um,
seems like a toy I would have in 1999.
yeah, it's not very stealthy, I should say. And the like conclusion here is that Bane fears being free from prison because he grew up in that environment. He's so used to that. And then he fears that no one will be able to stop him. He'll be too powerful. It's kind of weird. And Bane's ends up killing the journalist off panel, and Batman just finds the body. So there's no interaction between them, and Batman kind of doesn't save the day at all.
Nope.
So that's Secret Files #2. Uh, it was fine, whatever.
I thought it was a very forgettable book, and I would probably lean towards don't pick this up.
Yeah.
Just completely skip it. If you're loving the start of City of Bane, you can completely skip this because it doesn't matter whatsoever to the actual story.
Yep. But now this was a fifth week, July 31st.
Yep.
Well, I'm pretty certain it was a fifth week.
It was like a weird fifth overlap week, like the start of a new month with an end of another month.
So DC decided to put out some annuals and reread some of those.
Yes. It was a very annual heavy week for DC. I don't even think anything that wasn't an annual or like Secret Files came out, right?
I mean, last night, not much, lots of annuals.
But yeah, the Green Lantern annual #1 by Grant Morrison and Cam McCauley's back here doing art on this one.
Yep.
It's a menace from beyond the beyond. Who are they? What do they want? How can anyone stop them? Now, I read the very first issue of Morrison's the Green Lantern with Liam Sharp, and I went, "Wow, this is going to be really, really good." I'm going to read it in an omnibus when it's all collected because that's how I read Grant Morrison now, when it's all done, so it all makes sense. But because it was a light week and annuals kind of with their place in comics today are kind of usually one-offs that maybe not always connect to the big stories, I was like, all right, I'll take a chance on this and I'll go back to reading Morrison's Green Lantern here. And we open up with everyone got drugged at Hal Jordan's family gathering. Hal Jordan's waking up in the bathtub where I thought, oh, he's just hungover. No, everyone is kind of he's thinking everyone's. I think the crazy uncle spiked the punch, but the kids are fine. And no, it's all realized that there's this dimensional alien. Alien is messing with them, and his name is Zip, kind of like this electro spectrum monster. Which to me that's Morrison playing with the new enhanced color spectrum that was introduced in Justice League by Snyder. Which I thought was kind of a neat idea. Let's do with that. And this kind of little imp creature needs help, and Hal Jordan, being the Green Lantern, the space cop, is like, well, he's breaking some laws here. Definitely going to stop this. But in the meantime, Hal's nephew, Hal Jr., he needs help from him, and he's Airwave. So Airwave shows up to team up with Green Lantern, and this is, I believe, is the first post Flashpoint appearance of Airwave, which was pretty cool to see. And then Green Lantern and Airwave team up. Green Lantern actually gets taken out, so it's really Airwave who saves the day and kind of writes and saves the day for the family reunion of the Jordans. With just kind of very hyper crazy story that's going on for Morrison. This felt like very much in line with Morrison's early stuff, where everything's super super crazy. We get plays on different dimensions. The house is in like a hell dimension at one point. Electromagnetic spectrums. I thought it was really fun and pretty good. Vince, what did you think of this?
Yeah, I liked it. There's some cool moments that kind of tie into what Grant Morrison's been doing, like how Jordan says, "I'm not a superhero. I'm a policeman," and
Right,
he's kind of dismissive of Airwave at first. When Airwave's like, "Hey, my powers are totally relevant here. Let me help out," and
right.
Hal's like, which, especially my interpretation of Hal Jordan, that's totally in line with his character.
Yeah, I thought it was mine.
He uses a tuning fork construct, and I think it's cool how how basically it's fucked.
Yeah,
And
he just gets whipped to a wall and like, all right, he's out.
also Airwave gets fucked actually, and then Hal basically the way he turns it around is like he starts a huge argument with between his family. It's
Yeah,
really weird. Airwave has lots of radio and broadcast puns, which is great. There's a really cool three-quarter page splash of Green Lantern and Airwave together,
yeah,
and I think Cam Coley really pulls it off. Where you see lots of effects, Green Lantern's green stuff, and Airwave's got all this radio electricity stuff, and it's like a splash page that you could see it in like 1995, you could see it in 2005, and you could see it now. Cam Coley kind of straddles that. Um, and then a specific, I mean, you were talking about how the whole spectrum stuff, uh, and really here is when a radio lantern from the unseen spectrum shows up to take
yeah,
Zip into custody.
which was pretty
And
sweet.
yeah, it's kind of cool, and that that's coming from the Scott Steiner stuff, sort of. So here's the stuff behind the page. So this alien race, this is not their first appearance. This is the
Okay.
same alien race as Crackle from Morrison and Miller's Flash run in the 90s.
Oh my
Crackle
god.
first appeared in Flash 136 and was originally meant as, I mean, he was like this radio based race, but you can, when I say this, you'll get it based on the design. The original version was kind of like a Sonic analog.
Yeah, yeah.
And so then here's the Airwave stuff. So Airwave is a golden age superhero. Original Airwave was Larry Jordan, published in Detective Comics from issue 60 to 137. That's 1942 to 48. Only over that huge span, only two artists, and the second artist only came in because the creator had to go to war for a little bit, and then he came back to draw it. And Larry Jordan was a district attorney and in the All-Star Squadron as Airwave. And he technically, I don't believe, had any actual superpowers. He just had familiarity with electronics. So he created a cowl, which had a radio, so he could listen into police reports. He had special skates, which allowed him to skate on telephone lines. And he had a pet parrot named Static,
Oh my
who,
god.
and within continuity, he retired after the end of his feature, basically, to raise his family. And right as his son, Harold Hal, began to exhibit powers which were conveniently very similar to his father's setup, but actual like powers that he was born with, he began teaching Hal how to be a superhero. But one of the men that he convicted while he was district attorney broke into his house and just fucking murdered him with a shotgun.
Jesus.
And so his wife, and I get so I didn't bother like checking all the names of the Jordan family, which are referenced in this issue. I think like Airwave's like father and mother might be in this issue, but it's not clear if there's any kind of Airwave legacy here.
I
But
know Dennis O'Neil is the one that created the Airwave that's the nephew of Hal Jordan.
yeah, so after the original Airwave was killed, the wife put on his costume for one time and brought the criminal brought him to justice. And then Hal becomes the next Airwave, and in real time, his first appearance was Green Lantern, Green Arrow number 100, and he became a supporting character in that book for a while. And allegedly DC's reprinting kind of that chunk soon.
Be
That's like
nice.
when Mike Grell took over drawing after the Neil Adams era. And eventually Airwave broke out on his own and had solo features by Bob Rozakis and Alex Saviuk in Action Comics. And I forget, there's like some dumb nickname that collectors use, but it's like it was the 3 A's in Action Comics because Aquaman, Atom, and Airwave would kind of trade off each issue. They would be the backup behind Superman in action from like
Okay.
the late 70s through the early 80s. So that's Airwave. I just like obscure characters and characters with weird powers. I think Airwave's really cool. I don't think the costume design is fantastic, but it works a little bit. And I think the fact that he has this connection to Green Lantern and they have the same name, I really like Airwave.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it's just always cool to see one of these old kind of obscure characters pop up in a book, especially like where they haven't been seen in a very long time. Like I only knew of Airwave because I have like when I was a kid I had the DC Comics encyclopedia and you're just flipping through it and you're like, who's this weird looking guy? Oh, or Airwave. And then it's just one of those things that sticks in your brain until you actually finally see them in an issue and you're like, oh my god, I know who that is.
Yeah. So another annual, Justice League Dark, annual number 1. This is by James Tynion. Well, at least he did part of the story. It's also co-plotted, and the actual script is from Ram V. And Ram V's name looks really weird on the covers because they always put the person's last name, so there's just a V there. And the art here is by Guillaume March. And it's weird because I kind of associate March with a lot of his covers where he does like a more pin-up style, cheesecakey, often with female characters like Catwoman or Poison Ivy or Harley Quinn.
Gotham City Sirens and Catwoman.
Yeah, and currently he's one of the Vampirella ongoing cover artists. But his art within here like fits really well for Justice League Dark. We open with a huge block of text. There's a few pages where they're excerpted from this character's journal, and this picks up sort of from the last arc, where I guess the Justice League Dark fucked up the Lords of Order, and they basically screwed up and reset all of magic in the DC universe. So the books of magic have to be rewritten before someone else does so, or something. And I thought that was like and they talk about, hey, we should call up Dr. Fate, or the other Dr. Fate, or Jason Blood. But like, I thought that was going to set up the rest of the issue, but it actually doesn't really tie into the rest of the issue much. But it's really more setting up what will come next. So I think this probably fits in relatively well to the series, and this will be collected alongside it. So apparently Constantine is sort of on Justice League Dark, but like a consulting kind of role. He refuses to say Constantine.
No, it's
he refuses to like officially be a Justice League member, and he has a conversation with Swamp Thing about the Parliament of Trees stuff. You know, DC has been doing this thing for like a year and a half, where like Swamp Thing doesn't have the official Avatar role in association with the Parliament of Trees anymore, and it's weird because the New 52, the post-Flashpoint version of Swamp Thing, they kind of got rid of the Alan Moore anatomy lesson stuff, where now like it sort of is Al Collin, but they also like they're never consistent with it. Now we get introduced to the character that this story is all about. So this guy, he's married, he has a wife, and he has a son, and his son died due to cancer. And this guy's also a flower farmer, possibly, or he just has a really nice flower garden. And a fire spreads, and while he's laying down in the flowers or something, and he wakes up as the avatar of the Parliament of Flowers. And he's like this creepy, like just Swamp Thing, but made out of flowers. And he runs away from Swamp Thing, who's trying to like advise him. And he runs into the Floronic Man, Jason Woodrue.
Of course.
And Woodrue kind of manipulates him and is like, hey, you have crazy powers. You can do whatever the fuck you want. And so this guy's plan is he makes human children out of flowers and then delivers them to his like depressed mourning wife.
Oh
So
my god.
suddenly she had, like, you know how people find like babies on the doorstep and they take care of them. Suddenly she has like 4 like 10-year-old adoptive children,
Oh my god.
but like the kids, one of them tries to like jump out of a window at a certain point and she catches them, but it's like, whoa, something's weird here. There's a Woodrue Swampy fight, which is actually kind of cool, because like for a second, like Swampy turns like more like wooden and less green. And Swamp Thing's whole motivation, once he figures out what's going on, is he's trying to get this flower dude to just read a page from a book, I guess. He's like walking around like, hey, read this piece of paper. And he finally gets him to read it. And it's a page from his journal, which we've seen excerpts of throughout. And the journal entry reveals that actually he committed suicide. He doused his flower garden in fuel, lit it on fire, and then laid down in the fire. So he's totally dead, and he's made out of flowers, similar to the Alan Moore Swamp Thing kind of idea. And then as he realizes this and everything, all the kids turn into flowers and blow away in the wind right in front of their adoptive mother, which just freaks her the fuck out. And Woodrue, and this just makes the guy even more depressed as he realizes this, and as he realizes he just fucked over his wife even more. So Woodrue, like little devil on his shoulder, convinces him to just chill out and plant himself into the ground. Like, hey, you're made out of plants. You don't have to like be conscious and keep living. You can just become a plant. And so he just lays down, like crawls up into like the fetal position, and then Woodrue starts eating him, which absorbs part of his like godly powers. And Constantine then shows up out of nowhere. I don't know how he knew where Swamp Thing was and everything, but he gives him a speech. And then Circe shows up in the end, Wonder Woman villain, to give sort of like an offer to Woodrue. It's kind of weird because it's pretty similar to what Lex is doing, but I'm assuming there's an actual Lex offer in this series later. I don't know if maybe this is Circe bringing in Woodrue, and then Lex is going to bring in Circe. I don't know. But I really like this issue. The art from March was pretty good. There was pretty like horror angled stuff, but it wasn't really like, it wasn't deathly scary, and was really a Swamp Thing story. I really enjoyed this.
All right. You gonna continue with Justice League Dark, or was this a one-off?
I don't know. It depends. Probably when the next issue comes out, it depends on how many books are out. I'm intrigued. I mean, I like Swamp Thing. I'm not. It seems like the next arc is going to be dealing with this Books of Magic thing. They have to reestablish magic. It's kind of weird that Wonder Woman's on this team, but the way they've set it up, it makes sense. And then
I'd rather Wonder Woman be on it than Batman.
Yeah, and Man-Bat's kind of cool. Detective Chimp's cool. I might check it out.
Oh, I didn't know Man-Bat's. That's actually pretty sweet.
Yeah, and he's pretty chill. He has like a quick conversation with Detective Chimp, and Chimp's like calls him Kirk. It's kind of cool.
All right.
That's our DC section. Some basically a bunch of filler books, annuals, and Secret File.
Don't worry. Next week is going to be crazy.
Over to Marvel Avengers number 22. I wanted to jump on this, and I convinced my co-hosts, only one of which is actually on this show, to check out Avengers number 22, the start of the Challenge of the Ghost Riders arc by
Which,
Jason
honestly,
Aaron.
I'm the only one that really cares with you on that, wanting to read this.
Jason Aaron and Stefano Caselli. Robbie Reyes, the Ghost Rider, is taking his brother to school, and the car takes over and goes vroom. The car's an asshole. That's the setup here. And this is weird, and actually where it would have been beneficial if Dan was on this episode, because his brother doesn't know that Robbie's Ghost Rider, but I swear to God he used to. And I think that's one of the very few Secret Wars things where they realize, hey, there's a sort of soft reboot, so if anyone wants to make slight changes, do it. Okay. I think that was changed. And so Robbie takes the car out in the desert and just beats the shit out of it, destroys it, but obviously that doesn't work.
So it just reassembles itself.
Yeah, it's a kind of funny scene where he takes a bus back or whatever, and then the car's right there, totally fine. Then he takes his issue to his fellow Avengers at Avengers Mountain, and this also gives an excuse for Aaron to recount Ghost Rider's origin, this version of Ghost Rider's origin story, which I think is smart, for people who are just reading Avengers. And Robbie basically wants an exorcism of the car and himself. He's potentially doesn't even want to be Ghost Rider anymore. Carol makes a Wikipedia reference, which doesn't work. She says, check out my Wikipedia, which I guess some people talk that way, but I would say check out my Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
And Blade is here, and I guess is an official Avenger after the Vampires arc, which was before War of the Realms.
Right.
He expands on Ghost Rider lore, some of which Robbie doesn't really know that much, because Robbie's like a very non-traditional Ghost Rider with the car and everything like that.
Right.
And Blade has a Hellfire shotgun for some reason.
I don't know where he got that, because wasn't the whole point of Blaze and when he had the Hellfire shotgun, like he had the power of Hellfire. Therefore, that's how he has a Hellfire powered shotgun.
Yeah, and but like it doesn't bother me a ton that that's not explained. What also isn't explained, and I have no idea, is that Blade is walking around with like a tiny man thing on his shoulder.
Yeah.
Which again, I feel like Matt should read this issue, even though there's literally zero acknowledgement of it ever.
There you go with it.
The car starts going crazy as they start getting things set up, and then Son of Satan shows up, and he's rocking like kind of like a pseudo hipstery look, where he has like a scraggly beard and he's kind of thin.
Looks older than what I normally see with him.
And during this exorcism thing, Robbie ends up going to hell, and part of hell is a endless multi-lane highway. It's kind of hilarious. And then the end of this issue, which flows into this whole arc, is Johnny Blaze shows up. He's the king of hell at this point, or at least this section of hell. And he's going to race Robbie, I guess, so that Robbie can get rid of the Ghost Rider. But I don't know how this works. Like, if Johnny wins, he gets rid of the Ghost Rider. If Robbie wins, he gets rid of it. What's in it for Johnny? I don't fully understand the setup here. And then there's a subplot of Thor, Iron Man, She-Hulk, and Okoye. They're in Turkey, dealing with some War of the Realms aftermath. And there's like an ancient fossilized metal Iron Man helmet in a mysterious cave. So I guess it's either a time travel story or it's like some Avengers BC stuff. I don't really know. That was like 3 pages here, and it didn't interest me much. Then there's a very weird one-pager of like homeless people shambling towards the Clint Barton and Kate Bishop playing ping pong. Very strange. I don't know that has anything to do with anything.
I think it has to do with the red texts they're saying. I think it has to deal with Absolute Carnage.
Yeah, probably. But like homeless, I don't know.
I don't know.
This issue was all right. I'm more interested in future issues where we'll actually, even though this issue was totally focused on Robbie, in the future issues we'll get more Ghost Rider focus and on Johnny and hopefully Danny, who are the ones that I care more about. And I'm expecting that most probably because, of course, Aaron has history with Ghost Rider. He did a run on Johnny Blaze, and there's a Danny Ketch / Johnny book not too far out. So I'm assuming this arc might set up little pieces of that. Because Aaron is actually usually good about kind of setting things up for people and picking things up from people as far as continuity goes. One of the few guys at Marvel who does that.
Yeah, I'm at least looking forward to seeing the other Ghost Riders involved in this. I know I'm hyped for the Danny Ketch book, so interesting to see how it works out. But I, yeah, I have nothing else really to add here. I don't really care about this ancient Iron Man helmet because I just don't care. I'm not really crazy about this Avengers team, to be honest. Like, it's all the mainstays, and then like three people that I feel like are just so out far removed of what you'd think an Avengers roster would be. I didn't feel like there was a really cohesive like team banter feel here. It was just like Jason Aaron has to use these people, and then like he throws his favorite action figures in. That's kind of how I
Well,
felt with it.
yeah. Well, they're sort of split up in this issue, but I
Right.
guess the concept for his Avengers is, hey, it's all the movie people, and then
Right.
She-Hulk is there, and then um, Robbie is kind of his like newcomer,
Right.
which lots of team books use, and then he has a rotating spot, and I believe initially it was Doctor Strange, and I guess Blade took that role now.
Right. It was Doctor Strange.
Um,
So
it's whatever. I mean, that's kind of been the trend for Avengers books for a while. Well, sort of. They had the era where it was not in a demeaning way, but they kind of had the diversity squad where you had Jane Thor, Sam Cap, and a lot of the teenagers all on the main book by Mark Waid. But I think overall, and I think this is the first Aaron Avengers issue we've read on the show, but
yeah, we read
overall,
the first issue back when we were doing Fresh Start.
yeah. But overall, I mean, everything I usually hear, it sounds like Aaron is putting in a decent run on Avengers.
Yeah, it's fine. Nothing to write. Like, it's fine.
Yeah,
But
I mean, it intrigues me more than a lot of the Avengers stuff the past several years, like
right,
post Secret War.
it definitely feels like an Avengers book. But I don't know. Compared to Avengers books you've done on the show, I much rather. I'll take more. I'll take no more No Road Home esque Avengers stuff over this. But Captain America number 12, legacy numbering 716. Just wanting to let you know that that's the legacy number that we're going with now. It's the end of an arc. Ta-Nehisi Coates, Adam Kubert is on art for this. Captain America swoops into action as New York City police are in a firefight with Hydra agents, and Captain America saves the day. But the whole manner is that people don't trust Captain America, and Captain America, since he's gone to prison in this last arc, after the fallout of Secret Empire, even less so is he being trusted. And he has a long talk with Sharon Carter and the Daughters of Liberty, which are all these female heroes that have kind of been like a secret society of protecting the country through time. And just a couple members on this team, like Storm, Invisible Woman, Mockingbird, Spider Woman, Sharon Carter. I think I see Echo there. White Tiger, I think, is there on there too. Why can I not remember who's the girl with the robot arm?
Misty Knight.
Yeah, Misty Knight's there too. I don't couldn't remember what her name was. They're all talking what the next course of action should be, since they all busted Captain America out of jail in the last issue. But the decision is it's time for Captain America to hang up the shield once again, as Steve Rogers is now just going to be Steve Rogers. And he's back in like the super soldier garb from when Bucky was still Cap and Brubaker was writing the book. And he's complete with the hologram shield. Um, at the same time, Nick Fury Jr. is calling in favors of like the secret espionage spy tough to Winter Soldier, where they contact the Dryad, who is then revealed at the end of the book is Aunt Peggy. Peggy Carter's back, and she's like super young. Um, and Bucky and her and Sharon are all looking over what they're going to do with the body of the Hydra leader. That's we need help again. What's the male Hydra leader's name? Baron Strucker. figuring out what they're going to do with them. And Peggy Carter's back and like super young and figuring out what they're going to do with that. This was fine. Adam Kubert's art I felt was better here than the last issue. Um, I like that in like Cap's base we have all of like the old costumes set up like a hall of armor, but like so like funny things I saw are like the 1970s motorcycle helmet, like clear see-through shield costumes there and well. So I guess Captain America's worn that at some point. We see the U.S. agent outfit. Both Ultimate versions of Captain America are in there, which I thought were odd. Um, but also it was cool to see the Nomad costume just chilling in the back. Um, but yeah, I'm interested to see where this goes. This feels reminiscent of the Brubaker run to me, in some aspects. And I like the Daughters of Liberty idea. I think it's a cool idea. I'm definitely excited to see where this goes. You might want to hop on this on the next arc, Vince, just to see what your thoughts are. But I read like the first couple issues of this, and then I fell off of it. But I've been enjoying Coates' run on Captain America so far.
Yeah.
And I'm sure by the end of the next arc, we'll see him with the costume again.
All right. So Death's Head #1 came out this week from Tini Howard and Kei Zama. So quick Death's Head thing. It was a Marvel UK creation and originally meant as, well, originally it was going to be a Transformers character. And they're like, whoa, this is a really cool character. We don't want Hasbro to own it because that would be the rules if Death's Head first appeared in Transformers. So they made literally like a one-page story for Death's Head, and they threw it in a bunch of books right before the Transformers appearance came out. So he's officially a Marvel character. But since he initially appeared in Transformers, he was like huge. And then just to make his continuity even more fucked up, he went from, so this is what Death's Head looks like. And then just to make his continuity more fucked up, he went from the Transformers universe, and then he hung out with Doctor Who, which Marvel had the Doctor Who license. And so here, let me see if I can show this relatively easily. Here on this page is giant Death's Head with the what's the Doctor phone booth called? Fuck.
What?
What's the phone booth called?
The TARDIS.
Yeah, the TARDIS. Hang out with the TARDIS, and there's the Doctor. I don't remember which Doctor. I'm not that familiar with Doctor Who. And eventually becomes a bounty hunter in the Marvel Universe. And this issue is the incomplete Death's Head. And due to this miniseries, I guess Marvel is reprinting Death's Head stuff. They definitely can't reprint the Transformers stuff, but they can't reprint the Doctor Who stuff either anymore. So if you want the complete Death's Head, you have to get the incomplete Death's Head series. In the 90s, there was a redo version of Death's Head called Death's Head 2, with art by Liam Sharp and writing contributions by Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning. And this was the crazy 90s version. But whenever they go back to the character nowadays, it's the original Bounty Hunter version. And that's what this is. The art here is awesome and kind of off the wall. It's a little bit more like indie. You wouldn't expect this in a Marvel comic. It's kind of like this aesthetic where it's like half techno and half cosmic. There's a bunch of cool alien chicks. And then my excitement kind of just fucking nosedived for a second because the fucking MCU Blue Yondu appears, which has always been like a mind fuck because of course the comic book Yondu is, you know, from the future Guardians of the Galaxy from the year 3000. But because the MCU, the Guardians movies are so huge, they're like, let's make a second version of Yondu, which has nothing to do with the other version, and make him blue and with the like mini like techno mohawk instead. And I kind of hate it. Actually, I keep saying blue. The future version is also blue.
I was gonna say blue.
But the MCU Yondu is in here, And the sexy chicks are actually also like cyborg bounty hunters, and they're more advanced than Death's Head. So like Death's Head, like he's kind of outdated. That's the idea here. And they kick him out the airlock essentially, and he ends up in a New York City dumpster. And off panel, apparently someone grabs him. Someone goes dumpster diving for him, and we see him next at a rock concert. He's being used as a guitar amp, which I
Amazing.
guess is kind of. And Wiccan and Hulkling in their civilian clothes are at the rock show. They realized some shit was going down, so they switched to their costumes. I swore for a panel that Wiccan was a girl, and they end up teleporting Death's Head to their bathroom, and they're reminiscing on their days in the Young Avengers and how everyone has grown apart, and they're like kind of bummed out. And Wiccan does like this time-space seance to research Death's Head, and he sees like all these alternate futures and stuff. And then Death's Head breaks out of the bathroom, starts shooting up the whole place, and the mattress gets flipped over, and it turns out there's like this weird punk hipster version, like punk hipster teenage version of Death's Head that was under their mattress, which Wiccan knew about, but Hulkling didn't. And Death's Head is really freaked out. And I don't know how they didn't, like, how Hulkling didn't notice this under their mattress, because it would seem like it would make it very uncomfortable, including the giant axe gun, which the body is with. So I don't know where this series is going from now. It's basically a Wiccan and Hulkling / Death's Head series, which
Okay.
I guess gives it an appeal, gives it an extra layer of appeal to certain people. So Young Avengers.
Now.
It's definitely worth a flip for the art.
Okay.
It didn't wow. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with it. It didn't wow me though.
Will you be getting the Marvel Legends Death's Head 2 figure, as he was one of the more recent Marvel Legends figures that came out, which I was just completely amazed that Death's Head 2 got a figure in 2019.
I did not know about that. I actually think I don't own any Marvel Legends. I'm not really certain. I have a Namor. I think that was a Marvel Legends.
Yeah, your Namor's a Marvel Legends one. It's the more recent one too.
But I don't know. I always tell myself like, hey, a few Marvel Legends would be cool, but I've never gotten around to it. But yeah, check out Death's Head.
Whenever I go to cons, it's always like, oh wow, those are cool, and they never have like the characters I want, or like the character I want hasn't made it into the line yet. Like, or it's just like the super chase figure. Like, I'm pretty sure a red suited Daredevil got made, but just like it's super hard to find. Only the Netflix version is the one that's the more commonly found one. So I'm like, well, I don't want that. So, but no, the Death's Head 2 wasn't a Build-A-Figure though, which was the crazy thing. Like, it's just a standard figure in the line.
Fantastic Four number 12, Dan Slott and Sean Isaacs. I think that's just how you pronounce it.
Yes.
Assad Ribic cover. I don't really like Assad Ribic's covers on this series at all. Honestly, I don't really like Ribic that much in general.
It's a bad cover.
I guess he's on this series because it's like kind of flows from Secret Wars, Hickman's Secret Wars. As soon as they announced it, and even the first issue cover I didn't like. I thought he was a bad choice for this. So the setup here is that this is after the marriage, obviously. I'm not sure how many issues ago that was. The Thing is going to turn to human form for a while. And during that, he's going to go on his honeymoon with Alicia. There's a weird moment where they make a joke to Johnny about marrying a Skrull. And Johnny says, hey, that's also kind of hurtful. And I'm screaming, please, Dan Slott, bring back Elijah. Make it be a happy relationship. It would be cool. And so Ben and Alicia, they're somewhere in the Caribbean or something. He doesn't tip the attendant. He gives him a autographed photo, which is kind of weird. And
well, the best part about that is he justifies it. He's like, why should I tip him? I carried all the bags. He carried like 2 bags.
But maybe it doesn't matter anyways, because the attendant is up to some bullshit.
Yeah.
And so the Thing's wedding ring, I thought this was kind of cool. His wedding ring is made out of vibranium, so it fits on his giant Thing fingers, and also he can keep it on while he goes superheroing and just punch the shit out of people with his wedding ring on.
Yeah, and it's awesome.
But when he since it's made out of vibranium and not like unstable molecules, when he transforms into Ben Grimm, his human form, his ring is just going to slide off. So this gives Alicia the opportunity to get on her knees and give him a human ring for a kind of cute moment. And then things go to shit when the fucking Hulk shows up, washes up on shore, and wants to fight the Thing. And Ben is like, chill the hell out. I don't care. You're the strongest there is. Leave me alone. And also, he only has a minute and a half before he transforms into a human. And the Hulk is like totally out of character, and Ben is picking up on that. And it's pretty immediately revealed that it's Puppet Master manipulating
Yeah.
him. And it could be that he's actually somehow manipulating Immortal Hulk, or it's, some kind of construct. Of course, the Puppet Master is Alicia's father. And this issue ends with, I think, Alicia like buried in rubble. And
Trapped kind of. Yeah, she's trapped in a mountain that got knocked loose when the Thing was flung into it.
yeah, and there's just a pause on the fight, and he has a minute left, and the next issue will conclude it, I guess. So I guess I have to read the next issue. Then the rest of this issue, which they could have used to just finish this fight,
Yeah.
instead there's a preview for the new Future Foundation book by Jeremy Whitley and Will Robson. And it's more of an Alex and Julie Powers story. Alex's costume is fucking awful. It's really
It's
terrible.
bad.
Uh,
Really, really bad.
Julie has some continuity references to what's been going on in Runaways because she was dating Carolina for a while, but now Carolina's with Nico Minoru. And the Future Foundation setup is they're collecting pieces of the Molecule Man, and I don't really care. I don't know, just not my thing. If like I'm not really 100% certain what the setup for this series is going to be, but I don't believe Franklin and Valeria are going to be a ton involved, and so it's mostly
No,
like
even more. Why aren't the getting used?
Yeah,
That's big. That's been the big slight on Slot's run, is he doesn't use the kids well at all.
But the main story, the actual Fantastic Four story, even though I wish it would actually be finished in this issue because they could have, I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it. I thought the art was good. I don't think the Hulk. I think he'd be an untouchable character right now because there's just no way this syncs up with anything in the storyline of Immortal Hulk right now, and that doesn't work really at all. Now, obviously, things like Avengers No Road Home, he was in that, but Al Ewing was writing that, so it was all in line, and it fits easily. Yeah, the Hulk is a character that should be like, no one gets to play with him right now. That's kind of my thing with it, especially for like the way the Immortal Hulk's been treated. Like, there should be no way that Puppet Master would even be able to like control him. That's my takeaway from it. But in the once you settle that down, yeah, it's all right. But this Future Foundation tease is almost like half the book, and it really they could have just finished the fight, and this could be a one and done. Marvel Comics presents number 7. We get Iron Man versus the Great Recession. We get not quite the finale of this Charles Soule Wolverine story and a Winter Soldier story. As always, I'll take the Wolverine story to start. We open with Wolverine during 9/11, and then as he's going on, but he's also trying to track down his daughter, who he saw in the last time he fought this demon thing, as he's fallen into a Great Depression. I thought that entire sequence was kind of really bad and tasteless. Why was 9/11 even in there? I have no idea. And like it's like playing with Wolverine experiencing all these tragic moments. Like it's really, really tasteless, I felt. Um
I mean, it's worth comparing because the last issue of Life Story featured 9/11 a little bit.
yeah, but it wasn't like showing Spider-Man, it wasn't like equating that moment to all the like the hardships Peter Parker's experienced. Like that was one panel that I thought was used in a fine manner. Opening up this with a giant splash page of it, and then showing how it connects to the pain and hardship Wolverine's experienced in his life, I thought was pretty tasteless in terms of why you're throwing that event in there. At least how I felt about it. Um, he's able to track down his daughter, who's basically just like, "Hey, I'm not really your daughter, even though she technically has to be. I exist only to fight this demon thing." And then they basically just show that they both have claws, and then that they're going to go both set themselves free by hopefully going and killing this thing in the next time. There was really nothing to this other than like Wolverine now has like a scraggly beard and even more scraggly hair, tracking down his new kid to go fight this demon. That's the whole story. Um, Next is Iron Man in the Marvel Age story, which is the ones that are taking the real life events and connecting them with Marvel characters. This is Ryan North and Rod Reese is the writer on this. Um, and this is Tony Stark, Iron Man in the in the Great Recession of the financial crisis of 2007 to 2008. We open with Tony Stark fighting subprime mortgage man in a bad dream. And Tony wakes up as he's all nervous and freaking out because he has a testimonial hearing about whether he was involved in the plays of the financial crisis with kind of like this housing scheme with it, and like he was meeting with one of his like work, kind of like a work associate that was like basically laying out the whole scheme to him. That guy that he meets with, by the way, is drawn almost exactly how um what's uh Gordon Gecko looks in Wall Street. I was like, wow, I can see what you're doing here. Um, the art also like changes. It's like this weird like watercolor painted style, but like in the opening shot, it's much more like traditional comic booky art, which I thought was odd. To just like completely switch up styles like that in the middle of this for the flashbacks. Then we go to real time. So basically, Iron Man's testifying that like no, he didn't take part in this, but he was aware of it and didn't do anything to stop it. And because he knows the guy who started this, who's responsible for this crisis, he just goes and attacks him, and he's like, "Put on this Iron Man suit so I can beat you up." And that's the story. And it's like, this is awful. Like, what was this? This was like terrible.
Yeah, it's a shame because Rod Reese is a pretty great artist. He's kind
Yeah,
of Phil Noto. He's kind of Phil Noto adjacent. He did Damnation, and then he did that Winter Soldier miniseries, which I think you covered a bit on this show.
yeah, I liked Rodriguez's art in that.
Um, I kind of stopped reading this once I saw Subprime Mortgage Man,
So
which
you stopped reading it on the first page.
basically, I guess it was a dream, but regardless, I'm like, okay, that's too much. But Rod Reese, formerly doing Winter Soldier, connects us to the third story, which this is the Spotlight story. So here's the thing: this is 2000s. What characters could you do for the 2000s issue?
Wiccan and Hulkling.
Well, yeah, I guess there's a handful of Young Avengers ones. There's Winter Soldier. Another good option would be Jessica Jones. I don't know who else. I mean, there weren't a ton of major like new characters that got their own books in the two.
What about X-Men? Hope.
Yeah, yeah, but you're never gonna do it. I mean, within this, you're not gonna do a Hulk solo story.
No,
It's
I'm just
not
listing
comparable.
off characters, but
Yeah. So this is written by DC Pearson. I don't know who that is. Drawn by Alessandro Vitti. This is actually set though initially in 1968. So Bucky is the Winter Soldier. He's working for the Russians, but he's in New York City to kill a defector. And then there's like this weird thing about eminent domain and highways. So then he goes a little superhero-y and like tracks down like a government official, threatens him to redirect the highway. And before that, he has to like fight like a weird monster collection. It's really
Yeah.
weird. And then it flashes back, jumps forward to the present. He's still Winter Soldier, but he's this is post Brubaker and everything, so he's normal now. And he's talking about how he's focusing on self-care and almost buys a motorcycle or something. And he notices the park, and the baseball playing kid from 1968 is now a coach. And so he was able to redirect the highway so this little playground doesn't get destroyed. And then there's this bummer scene of the dead defector professor's family visiting their grave right nearby. This story was way better than the Iron Man one, but I didn't like this either. I felt like this was a lot of out of character stuff for the Winter Soldier in multiple layers. First of all, while he's brainwashed by the Russians and everything, like, why does he give a fuck to go out of his way to threaten this government official to redirect the highway so that little kids can play baseball? Especially while
my reasoning for that is because I think it was said like because there were multiple times the Winter Soldier was taken out, right, for missions. And each time they reactivated him, there's the Russian strength on his manipulation got less and less each time. And I thought the way I connected this was okay, knew he'd had to do this mission, but like he saw this wrong and it connected him more to how he used to be, with like kind of the grip being lessened on him. And that's why he was able to act in that fashion in 1968.
And then in the present, I get it. The Winter Soldier, you can make a point that he has, some kind of various like mental health things. He dealt with brainwashing for a long time. He's an old dude in a young person's body. There's lots to dig into psychologically. But him talking about like self-care, which is like a very like modern and like almost trendy-ish kind of concept.
There's some of that in the Kyle Higgins miniseries, though.
Okay, so maybe that's picking up on it, but I don't really see this guy who was born in the 30s talking about how he has to focus on self-care. It seems kind of weird to me.
Yeah.
But I don't know. The story was it was pretty throwaway. So
Yeah.
I don't read the Wolverine stories, but it seems like this issue not a great issue of this Marvel Comics.
Oh, it was terrible. Nothing happened. He found his daughter again.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And they're gonna go fight the same demon thing he's been fighting the whole story.
So we're gonna close things out with probably the biggest book of the week.
Yeah.
Powers of X #1. This is Jonathan Hickman.
Was this your pick of the week?
What was that?
I said, was this your pick of the week or was it Justice League?
No, mine was Justice League Dark Annual.
Okay.
Art here by R.B. Silva, but the coloring is also by Marty Garcia, who does House of X. So that keeps a little bit of visual continuity. So that we learn that, so there's three kind of timelines in here. There's X to the 0 degree, which is year 1. No, there's 3. There's X to the 0, X to the 1, and then X to the X squared, which is whatever. So X0 is year 1, the dream, and that's Charles Xavier. X to the first is year 10, called the world. And so this is where it gets weird. So I guess it's implied that from X-Men #1 to now is 10 years.
Well, there's then there's year 100 and year 1000.
Oh yeah. No, there are 4.
Yeah.
But X to the first is the actual present.
Correct.
And so the X-Men have been around 10 years, which sort of that makes Cyclops like 26, 28 years old, which isn't crazy, but also like when you think of, it's the same issue with like 5-year Batman, stuff like that, where you
Right.
think of all the generations and all the different layers of X-Men creations and like school classes in the school and each era, even with a sliding time scale and everything, fitting it all into 10 years, a little iffy. I don't really like explicitly saying
No.
that.
But just
X,
for shits and giggles, what age do you think Cyclops like should be at right now? I've always feel like he's like early 30s.
I think he can be like 35.
Yeah.
I mean, especially like during the kind of like the Fraction era or even the Bendis era. I think 35 is a good age for him,
Yeah.
where he's totally grown up, he's matured, he's been married, his wife died,
He has
and
kid.
yeah, well, effectively, and he has Emma and everything, and he's a leader of basically an entire nation and race. I think 35 is kind of my ideal thing, but if this is 10 years, he's only around 26 to 28, 28 pushing it, because they were all supposed to be teenagers in X-Men #1. Then X squared is the year 100, and there's a war going on with Master Mold. And then X cubed, year 1000, called the Ascension, and there's this mystery character. So then into the actual like meat of the issue. In year 1, we have a scene where Charles meets Moira McTaggart at a Renaissance fair. But maybe this is not a flashback, or sort of, because Moira knows who Charles is and tells him to read her mind. So I think she's probably time traveling. That's my assumption. There's a quick page that uses like tarot card symbology, and I don't know how that connects and when we'll get back to that. It's just Hickman doing his, symbols, metaphor stuff. And in the present, Mystique is back with the flash drive from House of X #1. Charles comes off way more manipulative even than Magneto here. And that ties into the whole thing where it's like, whoa, Charles kind of out of character than usual. I don't know if there's something, something creepy going on behind the scenes that will crumble all this. And then the majority of this issue is in year 100. It's a Days of Future Past-esque future with cyborgy dudes trying to mine the minds of mutants, I guess for, sentinel purposes and stuff like that. We get introduced to Silo Bell, who's a telepath with an unreadable black cyborg brain. And she tells her friends to abandon her. One of those friends goes by Rasputin. She has blue skin, which turns into steel. She also has a soul sword, like magic. And there's Cardinal, who is red and has a kind of like swashbuckling nightcrawler sword. And in text pages, we learn that the mutant leaders have died or disappeared at a certain point. The mutants have reached a critical low number. So Mr. Sinister was approved to create breeding pits on Mars.
Yeah.
And there's a reference to that, to like this breeding concept being similar to Ahab's hounds from Days of Future Past. And the hounds prefer detection, pursuit, deception, those kinds of powers. And the hounds, that's BDSM, Rachel Gray from Days of Future Past. But Sinister, his breeding pits, they focus on offensive power sets. And there were several generations of experiments. One of them just had one power, then you had ones with 3 powers, ones with 5, and one generation in the middle had a lot of failures, and they were obsessed with pacifism and creationism. And so all of those are called cardinal. So the one introduced to earlier, he's one of many, even if they all look different. And then another generation betrayed mutantdom and collapsed the breeding pits, but that was set up by Sinister. I'm not really sure why. And so Sinister was turned over to the Human Machine Alliance and killed. And so Rasputin here has pieces from Quentin Quire, Colossus, Kitty Pryde, X-23, and Unis the Untouchable. So that means she has telepathy, intangibility, metamorphosis, force field generation, and a healing factor. So she's pretty OP. And she's got the soul sword.
Super awesome though.
Yeah. And so the Human Machine Alliance, their leaders are Nimrod and Omega Sentinel. And Omega Sentinel, we see well, it's not entirely clear if it's the same being, but we see a version of Omega Sentinel in the present story in a House of X
Right.
at the Sun base. And the man machine forces bred mutants as well, and those are the Hounds. So their side is very similar to Days of Future Past continuity. Hickman, and helped by R.B. Silva's art, he writes Nimrod as like kind of funny and sarcastic, which I think is fun. And Nimrod is very excited to use a bath on S.H.I.E.L.D, and these baths, I don't know if they're like acid or psychic energy or what, but they distill mutants down into data, destroying their body and consciousness and everything. And Rasputin is back to Krakoa, and this is where things get weird for me because she sees Wolverine, and based on his power set and history and everything, I assume this is legitimately Wolverine. But what
Right.
complicates it is some version of Magneto is also here, and
Green
Magneto. I
version.
mean, he's had his de-aging and stuff, but I don't see Magneto surviving 100 years in the future without any kind of crazy stuff. And then there's some kind of other like mutant who's like kind of like a Zorn-esque kind of dude, and there's a tree guy who's like almost like a mutant Groot thing. It's kind of weird. But again, it's unclear precisely if this is the Wolverine and the Magneto we know.
I think
In
it's the
more,
Wolverine. I think this might be like a clone Magneto thing with
yeah,
the green costume. I think it's Wolverine because he's got the same suit that we'll see him in X-Men. But if you look at his chin at the final panel, he's got like gray hair, which is why I'm thinking that's main Wolverine.
yeah. There are around 10,000 mutants left, with most of them are refugees in Shi'ar space, and the Shi'ar apparently have like some grand scheme where they're keeping mutants and they're going to invade the Earth's solar system, and the mutants are going along with that because then they'll be able to return to Earth. And the rest of the mutants, or the ones that we care about, are on asteroid K in the solar system, and they are down to 8, and we've seen 6 of them because there's the page with 4 of them, and we know Rasputin and this cardinal. So there are 2 of them in the Earth solar system that we haven't seen yet. And I guess Silo-Bell does die from Nimrod's thing. I don't think there's any way that he gets out. And then year 1000, Nimrod, or at least some version of Nimrod, is a drone in a library, and there's
Right.
like this mysterious being, and I guess it's like it's kind of like a creation myth kind of thing. It's like talking about how civilization is a cyclical thing, and there's like this very Adam and Eve type of panel with these 2 like I don't know if they're humans or mutants or whatever, but I guess this weird guy in his library is kind of recreating the Earth. I don't know. My reaction is mixed because like there's lots of cool stuff here. Like it's a decent story and everything, but like it's not at all the kind of X-Men story that I'm hoping for and wanting to see and everything like this. Like all of this is set 100 years in the future, 1,000 years in the future with characters I don't care about. But I guess we'll see as this goes along how this weaves in and out of House of X as a kind of meta story. And then I'm hoping that this Powers of X timeline and everything isn't emphasized so much on the ongoing X-Men books after House of X.
Right. With I think my theory is that they'll intertwine and like this timeline will be destroyed and we get a full reset when we get to the actual books launching, or at least that's what I hope. I think though with this series, I think it kind of proves. I think the X-Men doing superhero stuff is pretty much dead.
Well,
Um,
again, it's hard to tell until we get into the actual books.
right. There is some thought-provoking stuff here. Like I like all the ideas. I think all the ideas are pretty cool. All the Mr. Sinister stuff is kind of like super dark and twisted, and I like it. because I like Mr. Sinister, but yeah, I like this not as much as House of X, but I think that's because House of X we're seeing characters we're familiar with. Um, though I liked some of these new future characters that we saw here. Um, but yeah, very interested to see where it's going. And I felt like I'm saying that after every. I'm probably going to end up saying this at least for like the next 2 issues of this to see where it does go. But I'm definitely on board. I think it's lived up to the hype in some aspects where everyone's talking about it and it's been a success. Which for the line, I think that is an important aspect for it right now. But if you've got nothing else to say, I think that's our show for this week. Other than if you want to
Yeah.
spin that wheel and let us know what the retro book is going to be next week.
Yep. So next week we're going to be reading The Flash number 130, DC from August 1962. So we're pretty much, it's actually pretty much very close to the Superman issue we read this week. But I think it'll be an interesting comparison because it's Barry Allen Flash, which I feel like we will determine, but I feel like we will actually, even though it's only a year after the Superman issue you read, I feel like it'll feel like 5 or 10 years later because, Flash in this era is totally Silver Age, and Silver Age Superman is still kind of like crazy and wacky. But we
Right.
will, and actually, Flash 130, to dive into it a little bit more, it's a rogue story. So Mirror Master, Trickster,
Yes.
Captain Cold, the Top, and Captain Boomerang are all going to be in the story. And also, there's a backup where Wally West, Kid Flash, hangs out with the Elongated Man. So
Okay,
should be
so this is the greatest issue
fun.
we've ever read on the show.
I don't know about that. We'll see.
All right. This is, I think, contender now for best retro book we've ever read.
Well, we haven't read it yet, but hold your judgment. Thanks for
Excited.
watching. Thanks for watching this episode. As we said, we're still kind of learning a little bit with the format. You may have seen the issue banners as we moved along. I was a little slow on some of them. We will improve that as we go forward. And tune in next time for more fun.
Take care.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, Hangouts. Bye.